I used to have several sites. Now I kind of like the grower's edge. It gives me that cash max. You can tell it which markets you're looking for, and it will tell you what your highest net back is based on the price they're paying at that time and the basis that they're paying. And that's pretty handy because I don't have to go to so many different sites.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Thursday edition of GrainTV. I'm Kevin McNew. To my left, Cody Bills. We had a market that was on the downside today. Wheat leading the charge lower on a 12-cent loss. Beans off 8 and corn a skimpy 1-cent loss. Cody, what happened in beans today? We were trading higher but didn't end that way.
Well, first of all, we had very positive export sales earlier on this morning. We even had a reportable sale to China over 100,000 metric tons, so that was very positive. So we were starting off very nice, but when you look at the chart here, you'll notice that we probably had some resistance up there. We are getting toward the high side of the range that we've been trading. Not the absolute max where you see these tails go all the way up around that 1070 area, but we are on the higher side of the range, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're getting a little bit of selling pressure, especially as people prepare for this WASDE report on Monday. Of course, we have a number of reports that are coming out on Monday. We have the planted acreage in terms of winter wheat. We have quarterly grain stocks. We have the WASDE supply and demand report. So all these reports are hitting the market at the same time, really could cause a splash. But let's talk a little bit about these export sales. You'll notice corn came out on the low side of analyst expectations, booking only 387,000 metric tons. That was very disappointing, down about 57% week over week. All in all, though, corn does still maintain a pace that is ahead of the expectations that we would have for where they need to be at this time of the marketing year. So I'm not overly concerned when you look at the big picture for corn export sales. When you look at soybeans, we really beat analyst expectations. We booked almost 90%, or actually 90% of what the current USDA expectations are for export sales. So when you look at that, I think we really have some room here for the USDA to revise their export sales higher in this next WASDE report.
And you see that in analyst polls that we'll look at in a bit, where soybean ending stocks are expected to dip below 400 million bushels, probably on the heels of very strong export demand.
Absolutely. And then when you look at wheat, wheat was trading down very sharply here today. I think part of the reason why we were breaking down to those lower price levels is because we had very disappointing export sales. Look at this, only 151,000 metric tons sold. Expectations between 200 and 400,000 metric tons. Keep in mind that we rallied up to these heights simply on the back of Russia coming out. They're curbing their exports. We expected that we would see export sales pushed onto the books of USDA or of our export sales, and we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen an increase in wheat sales, and that's been very disappointing and one of the reasons why we're trading lower today.
And, even today, Egypt's tender is basically gone to France. Most of that business is going to someone other than the U.S., and so you're exactly right. Wheat in the U.S. is just not competitive right now at current price levels.
Absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit about the WASDE report and these reports that are coming out. We've been looking at this acreage. We've been looking at production. That's going to be very closely monitored here in this Monday report.
Right.
What are your
The January report is the final production estimate by USDA for old crop 2014 for corn and beans, and analysts look for very little change in either corn or beans, but a slight drop in both. In corn, the average guess puts production around 14.349 billion bushels versus 14.407, so you're talking about a 50 million bushel drop, not a big number in terms of what analysts are looking for. In soybeans, that change is even slimmer, with only about a 2 million bushel change in overall production on a 3.956 billion bushel crop. So overall, the trade is not looking for much of a movement. Now, as we talked about yesterday on GrainTV, it's interesting to see that in years of high, or in record crop years of record yields, we actually do usually see a bump up in this January forecast. So it'll be interesting to see if USDA will go with the analyst estimates of actually cutting production, or will they be surprised from maybe better than expected yields or acres or whatever the case may be. So stay tuned on Monday to see how that plays out. In terms of ending stocks, the carry out for corn and beans looks to be lower. Cody, what do you see in those numbers?
Well, yeah, when you look at ending stocks here, you'll notice that the average analyst guess for corn is a little bit lower for corn. It looks as though we're going to see a little bit, or expectations are for ending stocks to come in a little bit shy of where we were in December. Notice soybeans here, 393 million bushels, lower than what we saw in December of 410. I would expect probably a good portion of that will come from export sales, as we are still well ahead of pace. Now, one thing we want to keep in mind when we think about export sales is, though we have booked an awful lot already, when you look to South America, a lot of their crop got put in later than normal. A lot of that had to do with the dryness early on in the season. So what we could potentially see is a situation where once South America starts harvesting and the majority of the crop comes off all at once because it was pushed into a very finite time period, we could see logistical problems. And I think there's a good chance that we could see export sales pushed to the U.S. books simply because we can get the crop or we can get the grain out of the country and to the procuring nations.
Exactly. And on the demand side for corn, one thing I'd point out to viewers is, in years of record crops, we tend to get surprised in terms of how much feed use there is in that first quarter of the marketing year. So I wouldn't be surprised to see stock numbers come in a little shyer or a little lower than what we're looking at because of better feed use. It will be interesting to see, because we do have a slim cattle on feed number, but poultry numbers have been going up. Hog numbers returned, back to above last year's level finally in this last quarter. So we could see ending stocks a little bit slimmer than what's projected because of better feed use.
Well, that sounds fair enough. Guys, if you haven't already done this and you don't have access to live quotes, go to grainhedge.com. Go up and take a 15 or a 14-day free trial. You can see what it's like to have live quotes on your mobile trading platform as well as your desktop. And the best thing about it is you can watch how the market's going to react to these numbers on Monday live in real time, tick for tick. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Thursday, we'll see you here Friday for the weekly wrap-up.